This is the Survival Library, and I thought we should start with this work here. So I won't talk necessarily about every work, but I'm going to draw out clusters and themes. But this work was the piece that almost became, for me, the signature of the show. It's a collage by an artist called Shana Moulton. She's an American artist, and she generally works with video, installation and performance. And I just thought this collage was perfect for the exhibition because it draws in a few of the things that you've heard me talk about outside. It's obviously the body, but this idea of it being fragmented and broken apart in order to be reseeded into something new. And then there's also this sense of a wish to be repaired or remade. You've literally got the plasters in this, which is fantastic. And there's also this little charm here that reads, "Never, never give up," which I thought felt like a wonderful charm or survival spell for the exhibition. So the figure is literally cut apart and reassembled, which obviously connects to the woman in Han Kang's story. And it also links to Simon Grant's essay that talks about fragmentation and metamorphosis. So collage being this wonderful illustration of fragmentation and reassembly. And the two pieces over here, the one in the alcove is by Chantal Powell, and this is by Hannah Hughes. Daphne's piece, so she takes photographs of real places, but then she cuts up and reassembles the colour negatives to create a new landscape. So there's an aspect of it being real and imagined. It almost feels like a hybrid landscape, a hybrid bodily landscape. And then Hannah's collage is, so she's created almost a still life of forms using archival pigment printed papers. And I felt it felt both geological, bodily, architectural, and although it reads like a still life, the title is called Pendulum, and I really liked that because there's this sense of movement. And throughout the exhibition, transformation is something that isn't a fixed end, it's something that's constantly in a state of becoming. The jug here is by Simon Bayliss, and this is like fantastic for a number of reasons. So firstly, there's he created this, he was here yesterday and he was talking about how he made this in response to dreams and analysing these from a psychoanalytic point of view. So you've got various words and symbols on here that link to this dream state, but they're also bodily and vegetal forms. There's a symbol of a snake here. So there's some wonderful actual symbols on the jug, but then also the jug itself, it links the story back into the domestic, links the exhibition into the story of the domestic, it was quite a deliberate choice to leave the furniture in the room rather than display the works on plinths to link this directly to the story. But in the story, the woman has to be watered. So there's a very literal link with this work. But vessels, as well as having this function of serving and tending, they're also a wonderfully archetypal symbol. A vessel is something that holds something, it holds a process, it's often a place where incubation and transformation takes place, which, as I mentioned, is something I'm interested in. So this is a piece of mine, glass and ceramic work, and it is another vessel, but it's also linking to the image of seed. It's called Divine Germ, and at the end of the story, the woman drops the seeds. So there's a link with that. The colour is very deliberate. It references viriditas, this divine greening, a life force that runs through all things that people like the mystic Hildegard von Bingen talk about. Carl Jung talks about it. So this wonderful greening force that we all share. And then the form of the arm is deliberately like a tendril. It's also quite serpentine-like, and that links to a number of forms in the exhibition as well. So in the alcove behind you there is Nina Royal's fantastic transformative snake. So it's called Birthing Permutation, so again has this wonderful sense of many things being possible and constant changing. The snake is a a well-known symbol of transformation. It sheds its skin, it becomes something new. So this snake on Simon's jug, it's with Nina, it's here, it's even with Marianne Walker's piece on the floor that's called Arrive. So this is actually a plait of hair. Marianne works with their sculptural drawing. She works in graphite on air-dried clay, and she brings an animism to her work to see the plant and animal within the human. So this form is a plait of hair, and she talks about the hair as a potent symbol historically in women. But it's also got this form that could be a root, a tail, a snake again. So it's this wonderful shifting between possibilities that I loved. And we chose to place it there so it feels like it's living and moving across the room. Marlene Dumas, I mentioned outside the faceless piece where you've got this sense of unreadability as well as exposure. So I spoke about that outside. And then over in the bookshelf, there are two works here. So the bookshelves are interesting, and we wanted to have this as curatorially part of the exhibition. So rather than just have all the books that were there originally, I selected to remove books that weren't relevant and keep in books that spoke to the exhibition either through their title, their content, or the imagery on or in them. So that's very much, again, instead of having it as just a backdrop and a setting, it's part of the exhibition and in conversation with the works as well. So do feel free to look at some of these images that are left open deliberately, to look at the titles. And then there are some, like Sheila Wakely, so there are some that are actually linked to the artist in the exhibition as well. And the works that are on the bookshelf, there's Gunnar LaCour and Lucy Stein, and they're quite different works, but they also, to me, held something in feeling in common. They're quite intense, dreamlike, psychological. They both feel like pieces you could almost be swallowed up by in one way or another, a landscape that takes you in, or this dreamlike psychological state. So I thought they're both fantastic. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about in this room, which I mentioned outside, is the vegetation, the land coming here. So these works are interesting for a number of reasons. So the technique is called kokedama. It actually is a Japanese phrase that means mossball, is it? Is it a ruble? So this is Robin Bamford, who has constructed these fantastically. So we spoke about different ways of working with vegetation in the space. And we spoke with Claire, who's back there, who works on the farm here as well about what things might be possible physically and what plants we could bring in and have survive in the space as well. And then Robin's sculpted these for us and created these wonderful living beings in the space. And this plant here is a brassica, and it's actually, you will see them out in the garden. And what's quite wonderful is, if you look, as the exhibition's gone, it's become covered in aphids, which feels very perfect given the story and the husband catching the aphids. But coming back after Robin had been forming these, it was wonderful to see that some of the shapes created ended up being very bodily. So there's a fern in there that feels like a kidney. So there's this wonderful bodily sense that they've got, as well as the vegetable again, these things folding in. And this little one here is also worth mentioning, the fact that it's from Claire's house, and I believe is it from 3 generations in your family? It's gone back the cutting. So it's really lovely. It's got this story behind it. And this sense, again, of people and vegetation coming together in relation. And so having the plants in the exhibition in these sculptural ways, it adds, I think, wonderfully to the exhibition in a number of ways, both visually and conceptually, and this idea of bringing the plant directly inside, but also the people that live and work here as well into the conversation. The first piece we come to is a painting by Francisco Bors. And he was, he went to Paris in 1925. And he was very influenced by people he met in that circle, like Picasso and Matisse. And then in the 1930s, his work softened away from the cubism that he was interested in initially, and took on this very luminous bodily quality to it. And the piece is called A Still Life on the Veranda. So it's quite literally, a veranda is obviously a transitional space between the indoor and outdoor. But the piece itself feels very in between state. So it is a still life. We've got the jug again, like Simon Baylis's jug. We've got the fork, the person, and yet it feels so bodily, particularly with the colours. This is fantastic flesh-like quality to it, which makes me again think back to the beginning of the story when he talks about the sunlight, like that peach flesh oozing into the room. I thought this is a fantastic piece for the exhibition. And then in the window behind me, this is a lamp-worked piece of mine. So it's flame work, which means you heat rods of glass that you can then shape. And it was a very literal choice to make you look in and out again. So it's got this vegetal eye. You stand here and you're looking out to this amazing vegetation behind. And if you're standing outside, you're looking in and you're getting the domestic as well. So it's another threshold piece.
Tricky to hang.
Yes, it was. Yes, I'm slightly nervous about it. It constantly feels like it might smash. Much is the way working with glass, it's always a bit stressful. But the other pieces, as I mentioned them as a cluster back through here, there's two monoprints by Amy Parrott that I mentioned outside. This is by Jane Hayes Greenwood. There's another Simon Baylis work on the wall. And they've all got that quality that I talked about in terms of altered perception, I think, or heightened perception. The forms could be vegetal, bodily, almost like vegetal apparitions, some of Amy's monoprints, I think. Really beautiful. And Jane's plants, for me, these roots feel very anatomical, like veins or nerves. So again, this wonderful crossing between states. And right at the end, well, I say the end, it's actually the first piece that most people encounter when they come in, is a gorgeous piece by Sheila Wakely. And Sheila was an artist who worked with, was very interested in things like surface and time, fragility. And this piece, it's got these delicate vessels, almost in different states of appearing or disappearing. They feel quite like thought forms almost. So most people see this as the first piece when they enter the exhibition, and I hope that it sets people up for this, a show that is all about shifting states and becoming and unbecoming. Head outside, please have a look at the works on the way through.